KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the World Wide Web at KCAA Radio. Let me try that again, kcaaradio.com. I'm sorry, my tongue was over my eye tooth and I couldn't see what I was saying. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. Just a reminder, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John and put down this bar, you'll find us. You can send us messages and such. Also, if you miss a program, you can catch up with us on YouTube. Just put in Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, in the search bar, and you can watch the last almost 3 years worth of programs. My goodness. See, I'm almost out of the terrible twos. I'm getting into 3 now. I feel like a big boy. And also, you can follow me on Twitter at Father John Reed. That's R-E-I-D. And send me some messages and stuff. I get a kick out of some of you guys. Some of the marriage proposals my wife's not so keen on, but that's okay. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations while realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I'd like to tell you about a wonderful place in the city of Claremont. It's Claremont Pharmacy. It's where I get all my pharmaceutical needs. They take care of me for my diabetes. When you go in there, say hello to Dr. Nikki Ho, who owns the establishment, or her husband, Dr. Martin. And if you are tired of being a number at a pharmacy, go here. You get personal service. They're on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. And tell them I said hi. Also, while you're in the city of Claremont, you know, I didn't have enough whiskey today. And so it's an Irish thing. But while you're in Claremont, go to BC Cafe. You'll love the food there. It's not just a good price, but they give you enough food on one plate to feed 2 men and a boy. They go by both BC Cafe and Kickback Jack's. That's how much food is there. They need 2 names for the restaurant. And tell Jose or Rocky or any of the people there that Father John said hi, and if you see me sitting there, come to my table. They have great outside seating and good service, but even better food. Come hungry, leave getting ready to go to Weight Watchers. It is good stuff over there. And I want to tell you about a friend of mine. Now, this is not a paid advertisement. This is from the heart. It's my friend Glenn Kirshner. If you're tired of getting hyperbole and you want some straight facts and you want to know what the laws are, Glenn was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. He was a Army JAG prosecutor for a guy who's been in the Army. I know what those look like. And he served in the United States Army for 6.5 years before becoming a federal prosecutor. And he has a program called Justice Matters. You can get him on YouTube, and if you want to support his stuff, it's on Patreon, but you can get the videos on YouTube for free. Look, he gives you the real facts, and that's what we need right now because we have too many people who are telling things that are really questionable. I know a lot of you tune in here because you know if I say it on the air, you can count on it. It's the straight stuff. Speaking of straight stuff, let's get the bad news out of the way right away. And you know every week we go over the COVID numbers because there's still some people who think it's a hoax, and I'm sorry, it's not. I did some more funerals this week for people who died of it. Their families will tell you it wasn't a hoax. Right now, before going on air, now these numbers come out of Johns Hopkins University. These are straight numbers, kids. We have 9,606,369 documented cases. These are confirmed cases. These aren't guesses. The death rate at this time, this is just like 10 minutes before we came on air, 234,911. Now that's 234,911 families that will have an empty chair for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I hope you'll say a prayer for them. And give them some care. It's a tough time. And, we broke a new record last night, and this just breaks my heart to tell you this. We had 102,083 new cases overnight. This thing is not getting better. We have to come together. Please wear a mask. It's not a political statement. It's a real need. If not for yourself, for the people around you. When I grew up in school, we got graded on citizenship. Well, this is part of good citizenship. So please join us with that. Tonight, I'm very excited, though. I have a guest I've been waiting for us to come in, and if she quit canceling on me, I'm just kidding. I had to cancel a couple weeks ago, so I'm kind of throwing her under the bus. But seriously, she has such a story of courage. I was so excited that I found out she can come onto the show because I think you'll be impressed not with just who she is, but the way she walks. And her name is Savanna King, and she's walked through some really harsh illnesses. I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about that, and we're going to have a little conversation tonight about what real courage looks like. She's had to go through several, what did you say, 27, 28 spinal taps?
27, yeah.
27 of them. Felt like 28, though, didn't it?
Felt like more than that.
Yeah. I'm going to even choke up just a little bit more than Mike. But she's come through it like a champion. And now she's using this experience to help inspire other people. And I'm inspired. And that's why I wanted her to come onto the show. And so, Savanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah. So tell the people a little bit about you and what your experience has been.
All right. Well, I'm 21 years old now, and I was just about getting ready to graduate high school when I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And I know we're talking about this kind of a mouthful.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
I have trouble with spaghetti.
I do too. So at the time, I just turned 18 years old. I was diagnosed April 18th of 2017. And I was diagnosed, went to the hospital, and then I was in there for a month, solid, never left my room, except one time to go to another floor to be treated for something else.
Huh.
But yeah, so then I went on a 3-year treatment regimen and in remission now.
That's good. Now, if I understand correct, you spent a lot of time at City of Hope, didn't you?
Actually,
Getting treated there?
I was treated at San Antonio Regional Hospital in Upland. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that shows, I have dementia. I have an excuse.
Well, oh gosh, this is embarrassing, but I think my doctor works closely with both hospitals.
Okay, then maybe that's where I got that from.
Yeah, so I have some treatment with City of Hope, but mostly through San Antonio. I should know this.
Oh.
This is so embarrassing. Oh my gosh.
Hey, that's okay. That's why I quit drinking. I black out. So, I'm with you on that. And, I found out I'm allergic. I break out in spots. Spots like jail, spots like Vegas, spots like the front lawn. So, I get it. I totally get it. But anyhow, so when you were first diagnosed, what was that like emotionally?
It was, when you're diagnosed with something like that, it's a lot of denial. It's a lot of shock.
Yes.
And a lot of fear, as I'm sure you would guess. But it took me a while to admit that I was actually afraid, like just up until this year. I don't know, I was in denial that I was afraid, I guess.
No, that's not uncommon. When I was working hospice, I had a lot of patients that didn't go on to hospice even though they were actively dying because their fear kept them from seeing, and not just their fear, their family's fear. They couldn't accept it, even though all the medical records are saying this. And it's truly understandable. We on the show, we talk quite a bit about having 3 acronyms for fear. False evidence appearing real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover. And it takes a lot to get to that face everything and recover. So I get the denial, and I get the not wanting to look at the fear because did you find that you were angry a bit?
No.
Okay, because some
Not
people
at
get
all.
angry, and the reason for that is anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary, and it's a way of us not having to look at our fear. So,
Because we don't feel like we have control.
right.
I'm probably angry about that.
Well, yeah, there's nothing like that feeling of being powerless, right?
Right.
So, what was that first part like as you're walking? Walk us through a little bit what that was like when you're trying to grasp what's going on.
Goodness. Very, very overwhelming. Doctors and nurses are throwing so much new medical terminology at you, and you're like, what in the heck are they even talking about? So it's just really overwhelming. The diagnosis, the words acute lymphoblastic leukemia, that in itself was overwhelming. I'd never
Yeah.
heard those words before other than leukemia. And I'm sitting over there thinking like, well, maybe like the acute lymphoblastic part cancels out the whole cancer part of that diagnosis. 'Cause
Wow.
I didn't
Yeah.
know.
No, that I can see that. Okay.
Right, yeah. Um, so it's just so overwhelming. The diagnosis was overwhelming, and then having my whole new medical team throw so much new terminology at me and what I was going to have to go through and all the testing I was going to have to go through. Um, I don't know, overwhelming is just the word that keeps coming to mind, I guess.
Yeah. What I keep picturing is like trying to take a drink of water from a fire hydrant.
Right,
There's
right.
all this water, and you're drowning in it, and it's overwhelming. As you said, it's just
It
overwhelming.
is.
And how do you get that drink of water from it when it's pushing you across the street?
Right.
So yeah, I get that. What about family response?
Um, well, so I have two younger sisters
Mhm.
that live with me, or that I live with, I should say. And I I don't know how they responded. I didn't get to see them for a while because I was diagnosed and went straight into the hospital, and that's where I stayed. And they were only able
Mm.
to visit a few times. My parents, my mom was, I think we were all in denial, of course.
Sure.
But my mom, I think, was like, okay, let's tackle this. What can we do? What do we need to do? And my dad also, of course, he was super supportive, but I think it was harder for him to
Sure.
handle. Not that it wasn't hard for my mom, but sometimes women handle news like that a little bit better.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. Well, we hairy-legged boys, as we say, we feel like we're supposed to be the protectors of the family. And when
Right,
something like this happens, we think, where did I go wrong?
right.
I was supposed to be able to protect you from this,
Mhm.
and I couldn't. I didn't even know it was happening, and so we feel so guilty that sometimes we clam up.
I'm sure that's exactly how he felt. Yeah.
And it's hard. And sometimes the person with the illness is trying to protect the people around them
Yes. Oh,
because they
goodness.
can see the agony that they're in. And then when we're sick, we feel a little bit guilty that they feel bad. And so we
Yes.
try to act like we're better than we are physically, even though at the time it's all we could do to keep our eyes open at the moment. We're in so much
Absolutely.
agony. Would that be an accurate statement?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. 100%.
Well, that's because Frank gives me signals through the glass there. It's just like that, yeah. For those who don't know who Frank is, most of you do by now, but he's the best sound engineer in the business, and he's been on this show for a long time, and he's my number one amigo. So, and someday he'll tell me what amigo means. so, so Savannah, your first month in the hospital,
Hmm.
was it scary? Lonely?
It was, what's funny? I had visitors. I almost always had somebody with me. Family members, friends, whoever, even my nurses were with me. I mean, just hanging out with me 24/7.
Nice.
But I was still lonely. Like if my parents were to leave me, I mean, for 10 minutes, oh goodness, I was going crazy. I could not stand to be alone in there. Scary. The procedures were scary. You know what was scary actually? Mornings were scary.
Really, tell me about that.
Because in the mornings is when the doctors come in,
Right.
and that's
doing
when they
rounds.
come and give you all the bad news from the test from the previous day. So
Mm.
I did really dread mornings because every day it was something new. I had another issue, another infection, another problem. So I did fear the mornings and the procedures too. I'd really never been in a hospital like ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
procedures were,
so it's almost like a whole new education,
oh yeah.
and but almost like training for a track meet at the same time. If I'm hearing you right, would that be pretty close to what it felt like?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Wow. I couldn't even imagine that. It's and here you just turned 18.
Hmm.
I would imagine it felt extremely unfair. You know.
You know what? A lot of people are like, "Gosh, you got to miss out on prom. You didn't get to see like all the senior activities." And I'm like, you know what? I wasn't gonna do those anyway, and I'd never really been into school growing up, but then, and so I wasn't really looking forward to graduation. I didn't really care because it was a given. Like, I took it for granted. And then all of a sudden I wasn't going to be able to go, and I was mad. I was like, really? I went through 12 years of schooling that I hated just to not to get to graduate? Really?
Yeah, that would be frustrating.
It was.
And so we're going to go to our first commercial break. My guest this evening is Savanna King, and you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that many people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. That's why State Farm Agent Joe Amlani in Redlands focuses on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call State Farm Agent Joe Amlani in Redlands at 909-894-4619 and put the life back into life insurance.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And just a quick shout out to the best guy in the business for a sound engineer who's working on rockets in there. I hope he doesn't blow up the sound booth. How you doing, Frank? You have some C4 in there or what? Your microphone's off.
I knew that.
He's good at sound, not good at
C4.
mic.
I don't need the black helicopters coming into my yard or into the radio station. They're loud and they'll interrupt the show. I have a very little rocket that I got from my niece because we launched them together.
No, we'll talk to your doctor afterwards.
But I'm doing well. How are you, Father John?
I'm good.
How are you, Savanna?
Good.
She's doing good. No, I always throw Frank under the bus, but you know what? He's like my son. I love the guy dearly, and he does more for this show than you could ever imagine. It is not easy being a sound engineer. I have the easy part. I really do. And the people behind the scenes are the ones who do the real work. So, and he said he's not in his head like saying, "You better believe it, bub."
No.
Well, anyhow, my guest this evening is Savanna King, and has a very impressive story. Now, I noticed you have a tattoo on your arm. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I do. So, this tattoo,
I'm going to have you get a little closer to the microphone.
oh, sorry. I'm looking down at my tattoo. Okay, so I'll backtrack a little bit. So, during that first month that I was talking about when I was first diagnosed, I was diagnosed and I was in the hospital, and they call it the initial treatment, they call it your 30-day stay.
Okay.
So, you're in the hospital for 30 days, as it sounds. And they told me that I was on a 2-year treatment regimen.
Okay.
And I was already, this was, I want to say, just barely maybe the beginning of the second week of treatment, or being in the hospital. I'm not even sure. It'd probably only been a few days of treatment so far. And I was so miserable. The cancer obviously was so miserable. And then the treatment is just as bad, even worse, actually. And I was just really, really struggling. Like, how in the heck, if I had this for 2 years, then how in the world am I supposed to get through it if I can't even get through these first few days of treatment? I can't imagine. So I was just having a really hard time, and I made my way to go take a shower because I had to shower in my hospital room. And I was just struggling, and finally in the shower, I'm not a huge crier, but I just broke down, and I was like, how in the heck am I supposed to get through this? I have 2 years of this. I don't understand. I cannot even comprehend how I'll get to make it through the 2 years of treatment. And finally, it dawned on me, like, hello, I need to pray on this, because the whole time I've been praying for everybody else, as I always did. I don't think it really dawned on me to pray for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that never really crossed my mind. And so finally I was like, hello, like, dummy. So I did, and I was just breaking down, and I was crying, and I just prayed, like, God, you know what? I don't, please help me understand, like, how am I going to get through this? And I prayed, just please give me a glimpse of the plan that you have for me. And I prayed that again and again and again in there. And I waited, doubtfully, honestly, because I was like, you know what? People talk about, like, hearing God's voice, and I've never heard that before. Like, that's probably just, a special person thing, not a me thing. And as I waited, just completely broken down, then he gave me the verse that is my tattoo here. He gave me Romans 8:28, which says, we know that he works all things together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. He didn't give me that full verse. He basically shared with me that he was going to use this cancer for good, for the good of his people.
Yes.
And I trusted that, and he told me, you know what? I may use it for just one person. I may use it for your mom or your sisters or your dad, or I may use it for thousands of people, and you'll never even get to meet them. And I said, you know what? That is exactly what I needed to hear. Even if it's just one person that I never even get to meet, that's what I needed to hear. And it just amazes me that God knows exactly what we need, because I didn't know I needed to hear that. But he knows us so well because he made us. And so I walked out of that shower completely at peace, at least for the moment.
Sure.
And I was ready to take on cancer.
Oh,
after
that's
hearing
beautiful.
that.
That's a great experience to share with us. One of the prayers I use when I feel like my back is up against the wall and I can't see the way out of it is a real simple prayer. God, remove my fear and direct my attention to what you'd have me be. And the reason I use that prayer so much is because when I'm in that moment of fear, I can't see anything but the fear.
Right.
But if the fear could be removed, I didn't say take it away from me, remove it, but direct my attention to what you want me to be. So when you do
Yes.
remove it, I don't just go looking for the fear.
Right.
And so it's the same kind of thing where you start doing that. And so I could understand why you would have that put on your arm.
Right.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it can't happen till it happens, years ago, you're too young to know about this, but there was a show, the guy's name was Art Linkletter. And Art Linkletter used to do this thing saying kids say the craziest things. And he'd get a few kids on the stage, and he would ask them their definition of a word. And just one night, he asked this little knothead boy, he says, what's the definition of a miracle? And the kid thought about it for a moment. It's a true story. And he says, a miracle is something that can't happen till it does. Wow. And that's what happened in that shower. It couldn't happen till it did.
Wow.
And
Right.
so that was a miracle that you got to experience.
Yeah.
And I think we think of miracles of like the parting of the Red Sea, your wife not finding your stash of candy bars, that kind of thing. But these are miracles. And where I
Right.
come from, we say a coincidence is a miracle where God decided to remain anonymous.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
So it sounds like that might resonate with what you were experiencing. Would that go along the lines of how you felt that?
Definitely.
Now, as you progress through your treatment, I would imagine there's some up times, some down times. Would it be like some people feel, and I'm not being funny here, it's going to sound like I am, but I'm being quite serious. Like some people, when they get a prison sentence, let's say it's a 2-year sentence, and all they could think about is if they make parole, and can they make it till then? And at the end of this time, once I'm on parole, it's all going to be okay. But then when they get to that point, they find out it's a whole different world they got to learn how to live in now at this stage. Did you have any kind of experiences like that?
You know what? Actually, because I was in the hospital so often, I was living there basically. I did call the hospital my prison cell
Sure.
all of the time, which is, it felt like that because I was literally confined in there. I couldn't, a lot of patients can get out, and maybe not right now, but typically can walk the halls or something. I couldn't do that because of my immune system. It was so low all the time. So I always called it my prison cell. But with that said, it was so good in there too. It was a fun prison cell because I did get to have a lot of visitors, and my nurses spent so much time with me. So we did have our good times in there, but I was certainly looking to the day when I would get to break free. And I did have a lot of people actually come in and be like, you know what, I'm going to bust you out of there, Savanna. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that again. Enough trouble already as it is.
Did they have to look at you through the window in the door and pick up a phone and talk to you that way?
That's what it felt like sometimes.
I bet. Prison is not just a jail cell. A prison is wherever you are at the moment that you feel confined and that you don't have the freedom of movement.
That's a great point.
So I would imagine there's a lot of that there because
There was, definitely.
you're not getting to determine what your day is going to be. They're
Right.
determining it for you.
Right.
And when that was happening, did you ever feel a little resentment? Like, I'd like to make some decisions here?
I don't know that I really felt resentment.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I guess this is kind of a lame answer, but it's just kind of a bummer. Because even
not lame.
outside of
Your
the,
experience.
yeah, even outside of the hospital, I still had so many restrictions, so many things that I couldn't do, which was certainly a new experience for me. I was wearing, okay, let me tell you, I was wearing the mask before it was a law.
Before it was the fashion.
Yeah, exactly. So like not being able to go out in public or not being able to do certain things, like because I had a port in my arm.
Right.
So that put a lot of restrictions on me, not being able to eat certain foods or really go too far away from the hospital because I would get sick so easily.
Did you have to wear a PICS?
A pick?
Yeah.
Like a pick line?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. Way to go. I had, I think 5 of them.
Oh,
I'm impressed.
I didn't realize you're so picky.
Very picky.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was a hospice chaplain for a long time. And so
Right.
and I've been a medical missionary most of my priesthood. So I know just enough medicine to be dangerous, not really helpful. But I had just figured that would be one of the treatments that you would be getting. So you have ongoing chemo
Right.
while you're going. What about the sickness from it? Did you have a lot of sickness from it?
I had a lot of sickness.
Yeah.
Goodness, I journaled a lot going through treatment, and sometimes I go back through my journals and I'm like, holy crap, my goodness, like I had just about everything you could have. But because my immune system was so low all of the time, I was at high risk for just about everything all the time. Create some crazy things sometimes. I was like, what in the heck? Like, who just made that up? This is not a real thing.
Yeah, I would imagine it would feel like that. When I started, I have some autoimmune stuff going on. And when I had to start changing things I had to do, I kind of rebelled a little bit.
Did you?
Because I didn't want to accept I had these limitations. I'm supposed to be walking with a cane right now, and you'll notice it's not in the studio.
Stubborn.
It's in the car. But they started having me walk with because I was falling down and I was getting hurt. I mean, one time I wound up in the ER because I really smacked the back of my head pretty good. And but I just wanted to feel like I had control over something, that if I was going to do it, it's going to be my idea,
Right.
not because I'm being told to do it. Now, part of that's because I'm Irish and we're just stubborn, okay? So that's why I was wondering if you sometimes felt like that, like, stop taking things away from me.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know what I really, really missed was having desire to do anything, because incredibly somehow the chemotherapy takes away your desire for anything and everything. Like one of my biggest passions is horses and riding horses. And I have one of my own, and I had absolutely no desire whatsoever to go to the barn, to take care of him, to see him, nothing. Which was so crazy because before that's what I was living for, really. So that was a big thing that was taken away from me. That wasn't a physical thing, aside from me having trouble like walking or not being able to do things. I really was upset about not having desire to do anything, to really see anyone. That was tough.
It sounds like a little bit of undiagnosed depression.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Because we do lose our desires. I understand about horses. I used to adopt race horses through
Did you?
Pegasus. Yeah, I've had some Del Mar winners. And
How cool.
yeah, they're fast. I did ride them, and but horses are a real commitment, and either you love horses or you don't get involved with horses.
Right.
And so I understand that. So when you say you couldn't muster up the desire to go there, what that says to me as someone with a clinical background is you're physically and probably emotionally depressed, as is appropriate. Your whole life has just been thrown upside down.
Right.
And what was up is now down, what was down is now up. And trying to learn how to navigate that. And every time you turn around, you said so well, mornings were the worst because now you get the bad news. What's today's
Right.
bad news?
Right.
It's hard to feel motivated to go with the horse on that. You know?
Right.
If you didn't feel that, I would be worried about your sanity.
That's a good point.
It's appropriate depression. People sometimes think of depression as something that, well, you're just not strong. No, you don't have a choice
No.
about it.
Right.
Some depression is actually physical. And when you're going through that much physical agony and such, the neuron and synapse in your brain can't always bridge the gap with the serotonin and dopamine. And to sound a little medical, I've read Boys Life
Fine.
magazine, and learn how to do surgery on your fellow Boy Scouts in the middle of the ghetto, and but I know I'm going to get some calls on that, but seriously, when that's happening, it's not your fault that you're feeling depressed. It's appropriate to the situation, and that has nothing to do with faith. It has to do with this really, as we say in polite company, creates vacuum. It really sucks. Okay? So I totally get that. And when you throw on top of that, you're trying to emotionally protect your family and other people and
Yeah.
be brave for them, you would be depressed.
Yeah, carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that brought you any kind of joy during that?
Oh yeah, most certainly.
Okay.
Most certainly. This is actually, I'm glad you asked, because I always tell people this was the best source experience of my life.
Yes.
Because obviously it was so bad, but there was so much good in it. And all that good was, gosh, it was all around me. Every single person that I talked to, I was suddenly, from that moment on, after being in the shower and having that conversation with God, from that moment on, I just saw God in everybody and saw his joy just surrounding me completely. It was incredible. It is incredible. I got to see it in the relationships that I was getting to build with my nurses. I still think that was the coolest thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm still really good friends with them. And I got to see it in friends that didn't know Christ yet and friends that did, and all of the learning that I was getting to do about God and about having a relationship with Jesus was so incredible. And then having people tell me, wow, you're such an inspiration. I'm like, that's a weird thing to hear, and I still don't care to hear it. But eventually it was like, okay, let's straighten something out. It's not me. It's totally all God. And once I was finally able to get that point across and could see that changing people and having them recognize, oh my gosh, is this what God does? Is this what it looks like to be in relationship with Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Then I was able to see the joy in all of the cancer even more. It's so incredible.
St. Francis of Assisi used to say to his friars, go out and preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
Yes. Oh, goodness, yes. Use your life. How you live is preaching the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're coming up to our next commercial break. Frank's looking at me through the glass like he's going to throw that missile at me. And so my guest this evening is Savanna King, and you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that many people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. That's why State Farm agent Joe Amlani in Redlands focuses on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call State Farm agent Joe Amlani in Redlands at 909-894-4619 and put the life back into life insurance.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, where you can listen anywhere from the globe of this beautiful earth of ours at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And by the way, if you do miss an episode, just go to YouTube and put in the search bar, Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA. And particularly, I know there's a lot of people who are probably going to want to play this episode back because a lot of inspiration here. And I sure am glad we've had Savanna King here sharing with us. So, Savanna, where do you want to go from here?
Well,
don't tell me Colton.
So career-wise,
Mm-hmm.
I see it fitting that I become a nurse.
Cool.
My end goal is to become an oncology nurse navigator.
Nice.
But my prayer ever since that moment in the shower has just been, God, use me, God, use me. So wherever it is God wants to use me, that's where I'm going to go. And he started it's been 3.5 years now. So I don't know, probably a year after I was diagnosed, he started having me do some speaking things here and there. And I was like, oh my goodness, I am so terrified of this. I am so not a speaker. And then I was like, you know what? I've been praying for God to use me, and here I am saying no to his opportunities. So I started saying yes, and I started getting more opportunities to get to just talk about him and talk about the journey that he's brought me through. And now I'm here today, which is so awesome. So I would definitely love to do more speaking anywhere and everywhere that I can. Anywhere God wants to take me is where I'll go.
Well, that's fabulous. And I like the vocation and profession that you're considering, because one of the things I think will make you very effective in that is not only can you talk to people about their treatment, you can share your experience with
Yes.
them and say, look, I know how this feels because I went through this and I survived.
Absolutely.
And here's what helped me survive.
Yes.
And that does more for people than watching a video on your doctor wants you to know these
Right.
things.
Right. Oh gosh, yes.
And that's the way of people not having to go through it alone, because when they know they have somebody who not only cares but understands, that changes the whole dynamic.
Yes.
And particularly, you have a very gentle nature. And so I would imagine you would become a very safe place for these people to share and know that you're being authentic.
Right.
Because we've been around people who, you know, they've memorized gospels and stuff, but there's no authenticity. They're just
Right.
parroting.
Right. Oh goodness, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you go with people that you know it's not them speaking. You know, like Paul said, not I, but Christ who speaks through me.
Yes.
And you know when they mean it and when they're just parroting it.
Right.
And because you've been there, your cross winds up being your gift.
Yes. Ah, yes. And, you know, I'm so glad that you said what you did about understanding, because, you know, I had so many people with me literally at my bedside 24/7 all throughout treatment. My parents, some really close friends, my nurses. You know, my nurses see that this is their job. They see this every single day.
Yeah.
And my family saw it every single day, and my friends saw it every single day. But they were so good about recognizing that no matter how present they were, that they simply cannot understand. Because you just can't unless you go through it yourself. And they were so good about recognizing that. So I think it'll be so special for hopefully my future patients to have a nurse with them that truly understands.
Mm-hmm. You know, Mother Teresa, one of my heroes of Calcutta, says, we're the only hands Jesus has. And so that's why we get sent out with our wounds, not for us to be perfect, for us to be perfectly imperfect and to be loving.
Right.
You know, I've shared on the show quite often, and I talk about this in my book. The moment that it really hit me, I was celebrating Mass with my superior, and while he was preaching, which meant I had a lot of time to think. Sorry, Bishop Donald. And I was looking at this painting of Jesus who had a little baby, little embryo in his hand. And the artist captured the loving gaze, and I got caught up in it. And at one point, it just washed all over me that I wasn't brought into the priesthood out of virtue. Rather, God said, in spite of your iniquities, I could use you to love. And all I could do was sit there and weep. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even couldn't continue with the Mass. I just sat there. He had to bring communion to me. And I stayed there about an hour after Mass by myself. And he finally this in his personal chapel, so he comes in to check on me. And I very feebly try to tell him what happened. I still can't really put it into words. As just like your shower experience, you could say it's sort of like this, but you can't really say it.
Right.
And so when I tried that, he just looked at me and tears filled in his eyes. He says, "Oh, you had the Christ experience. You've now gone from being ordained to being a priest." And he held me. We both bawled like a couple of babies because he'd had that. And it sounds like that's what you had.
Absolutely.
And it's not a just one-time deal. It comes in waves. And there'll be times that you feel like nothing's there. You're in the desert. And then suddenly it washes all over you again. And you know you can't stop it from happening. It's coming through you so much. And you think, gosh, you know, everywhere I turn, it's happening. And you say so well, everywhere you turn, you see God.
Yes.
And God's always been there. But right now, I know God's here.
Right.
So, yeah. So this sounds like this could be what your calling is. As Jesus said, you didn't choose me, I chose you. And you know, you paid a hard price, but with it, you got the pearl of great price. And now that's easy for me to say on the outside. How do you feel about it? What's your experience?
That's just like you said. I tell people also that I don't want to go through it again, but I absolutely would if I had to bring me to this place in my relationship with Jesus, and getting to see other people's relationships grow in him and with him because they got to watch me go through my journey. So I definitely, it was a long road, and it cost a lot in so many ways. It was an expensive price, but it was so worth it.
There was a famous lady, Angela. I know Frank will know who it is, but I really do deal with some dementia, and her name's just slipping me. But what she said that's so prophetic that I think you're saying is, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yes. Oh gosh, I think of that quote almost every single day.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're living that, and that's the difference. You're living that. You're not just thinking it, and it's good you're thinking it, but you're putting it to action, and that's why you're in the hands of Jesus right now, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
So just think every time you get a haircut, you're getting manicured.
Right. Right.
Sorry, I just had to do it. It's the Irish. So, what else would you like for the people to take with them from your experience? What would you like to share with them?
Ooh.
Maybe they're going through something right now.
Probably. Oh gosh, there's so much. I think I know this is so, you hear this all the time, and it's probably so annoying, but to trust that God is working in whatever it is you're going through, good, bad, or whatever. It's hard to trust that when you've never seen him do it.
Yes.
I know, absolutely. But it was amazing because thankfully he blessed me with that verse, and it was so monumental in my faith and helped me to be able to trust him. And once I did trust him, then he was like, okay, I'm going to show you now. And he's just been showing me day in and day out. So I guess I would encourage people that he is a trustworthy God, that he is a loving God, and that he is whatever it is that you're going through, he truly is using it for our good. Even if we don't get to see it, you can trust that he's working in it. He's working it together for his people.
And it's okay to take baby steps towards that. One of my favorite verses is when the guy goes to Jesus for healing for his loved one, and Jesus says, "Do you believe?" He says, "I believe. Help out my unbelief."
Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
Because we can have both at the same time.
Right.
And I found that God doesn't make too difficult terms on those who are earnestly seeking, and we get met wherever we are, not where we think we should have been.
Yes.
And I'm glad God's a lot nicer than we are.
Yes, me too.
Because I think sometimes in religion, and I know this sounds funny from a guy who practices religion, but sometimes we could really be poor examples of God's love. I think sometimes we scare people more than comfort them. That's not what we're meant to do.
Right.
But we're humans, and sometimes when we're afraid, we pass that fear on to others because they're so afraid of making a mistake.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad, what you're saying. We get so caught up in being upset or being concerned about where we think we should be in life, and we think, well, I'm not where I thought I was going to be. I'm not where I want to be, and God just can't use me right now with who I am, what I'm doing, whatever. Like, no. You are so unique, and the qualities that God has put in you are so unique, and that was so intentional on his part, and he can use you exactly where you are, being exactly who you are. And I think it's important that people recognize that.
Well, that's one of the big lessons of the Bible. God uses the most unusual people to do his work. Moses was a murderer who was fleeing. He was I'm losing the word at the moment, but yeah, he was basically a fleeing felon, fugitive. That's what I'm looking for, fugitive. I had to think of an old brother-in-law. I'm just kidding. So Just kidding. Sort of. But if it was you and I, we wouldn't think of Moses for that. I mean, come on, look at the guy.
Right.
He has a record. And,
Right.
But these people wind up, St. Paul. He was, putting Christians to death. And then if it weren't for Paul, we wouldn't have today's Bible because he was the best salesman we ever had.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, I think that's why we started using Gillette razors was because of Paul. He was such a good salesman, and they hadn't even been invented yet. And so what's happening is it sounds like when you stop looking to what you think you should be, you can allow God to use you as God would have you be,
Right.
right in the moment.
Right.
Cool.
And he'll be using you exactly where you are. And you know what? Actually, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about one of our pastors, and I don't know this story personally. She was just sharing with me the story, and he was actually diagnosed with leukemia as well. And he was in the hospital, and I guess he FaceTimed the church during one of the services, and he told the congregation that he was on a mission trip and that he was doing missionary work, which I thought was so profound, and it kind of hit me upside the head. Like, that's exactly what God was having you do these past 3.5 years being in that hospital. That's exactly what you're doing. And I've always been so concerned with, like, gosh, I can't wait till treatment's over so I can go on mission trips because that's what I want to do so bad. And when she said that, it was like, hello, you've been doing that and you can still be doing that right here where you're at. You don't have to go somewhere to go on a mission trip. And I just thought that was so incredible.
Yeah, because how you see anything is how you see everything. And if you can't see it here, you won't see it over there either.
Right.
And so you have to see it from right where you are, and you can only work from your own experience. And that's why that experience is so important, because people don't need head knowledge. They need heart knowledge.
They do.
And I tell people all the time that the greatest trip you'll ever take and the longest journey is 18 inches from your head to your heart.
Right.
And yet it's the most prophetic that we can ever take. But we have to get out of the way for it to happen. But even while we're still in the way, God can still work miracles despite us.
He can.
Or I should say in spite of us. He doesn't despite us, But cool. Well, we only have a few minutes left. What's some closing thoughts that you like for the people to know?
I don't know. I just want people to know that they're loved. I think that's really important, and I think that it's easy to miss in hard times and times like COVID. But I think it's just so important that they know that God loves them so much and that he does have a plan that's so much bigger than us that we can't see and we can't understand, which makes it hard for us to trust that he is working and that he does love us. But I think it's important that we ask him to take our blinders off and help shape our perspective to be able to see that love and to accept that love, because it really does change everything about your life.
Yeah. I would just like to add one thing to that. If you're sick, you're not being punished.
Oh.
You might be being prepared for God to use you in a better place.
Right.
My experience with God is that God is very loving, not condemning. And that's why I was saying earlier, I think sometimes we give a mixed message. And because you weren't being punished with your sickness, you
No.
weren't bad.
Absolutely not.
But God was preparing you for God to use you.
Yes.
And sometimes that's very painful, Abraham with his hip, I mean, he limped forever. And so I think that's a powerful message that you're giving. And I want to wish you the very best from wherever you go from here. And I hope you'll come back again another time
I'd
and
love to.
give updates where you're going and what you're doing. And I could just see you right now standing in front of people, sharing your experience with them. And what's most important is what I've experienced here as you give of yourself. You cannot give a greater gift, a finer gift. My phone thinks I'm talking to it. It's the only girl I can get talk to me is my Google. And but I'm so glad you're with us tonight, and I thank you for coming out. And my guest this evening has been Savanna King, and you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. I thank you for listening again tonight. And if no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And we'll be back next week, and I'm going to have Dr. John Smith on to talk about emotional hangover after what we've gone through in this election cycle. In the meantime, be well, and please be kind to one another. God bless.